Wasn't that cool? Yeah. Didn't they do a great job? Thank you guys for that. I once read a story about an American investment banker who was standing on the wharf in a small coastal Mexican village. As he stood there on that wharf, a small fishing boat came in and docked at the wharf with just one fisherman on board. Inside the small boat were several large yellowfin tuna. The American complimented the Mexican fisherman on the quality of his fish and asked how long it took to catch them. The Mexican replied, "Oh, just a little while." The American banker then asked why he didn't stay out longer and catch more fish. The Mexican said he had enough to support his family's immediate needs. The American then asked, "But what do you do with the rest of your time?" The Mexican fisherman said, "Well, I sleep late. I go and fish for a while. I play with my children. I take siesta with my wife, Maria. I stroll into the village each evening where I sip wine and play guitar with my amigos. I have a very full and busy life." Well, the American investment banker scoffed and said, "I'm a Harvard MBA and I could help you. You should spend more time fishing. You could catch more fish and make more money. With the proceeds from the bigger boat, you could buy several boats. Eventually, you would have a fleet of fishing boats. Instead of selling your catch to a middleman, you would sell directly to the processor, eventually opening your own cannery. You would control the product, processing, and distribution. You would need to leave this small coastal fishing village and move to Mexico City. Then, as your enterprise grows bigger and bigger, you could move to LA, and then eventually New York City, where you will run your expanding enterprise." The Mexican fisherman said, "But how long will all this take?" To which the American banker said, "Well, maybe 15, 20 years. "But what then?" asked the fisherman. The American laughed and said, "That's the best part. When the time's right, you would float your company on the stock exchange and sell your company stock to the public, and you would become very rich. You would make millions." "Millions? Then what?" said the fisherman. The American said, "That's the best bit. Then you will retire. Move to a small coastal fishing village where you'll sleep late, fish for a while, play with your kids, take siesta with your wife, stroll to the village where you would sip wine and play your guitar with your amigos." Interesting story, huh? We've got another fishing story that we want to share with you this morning, and I think you'll recognize the family who's reading it.
Story is from Luke chapter 5, and it's called The Disciples. Andrew and Peter were dirty and very stinky. The brothers were fishermen and had spent all night on the water trying to catch fish. Despite all the effort and experience, not a single fish was caught. Exhausted, they dragged the boat to shore and began to take the nets out of the boat.
As they were washing their nets, they noticed in the distance a crowd coming towards them. Staring into the sun, they squinted their eyes to get a better look. The crowd was pushing and clambering over each other, trying to get closer to the man who was leading at the front. As the crowd got closer, Andrew and Peter recognized him. "It's that Jesus guy," Peter exclaimed to his brother. "I wonder what's going on." As Jesus approached, the brothers noticed him looking at their empty boat bobbing on the waves of the water. Before they had a chance to say anything, Jesus waded through the shallow water and sat in the boat. The bottom of his robe was wet and dripping. Jesus asked Peter to push the boat out into the water. Interested in what Jesus was up to, Peter pushed the boat out.
Once the boat stopped rocking, Jesus began to talk to the crowds. When he had finished, he turned to Peter and said, "Now, go out where it is deeper and let down your nets to catch some fish." Confused, Peter looked at his brother Andrew. Andrew shrugged his shoulders. What's the worst that can happen? We don't catch any fish." Peter took a deep breath and turned to Jesus. Master, we worked hard all last night and didn't catch a thing, but if you say so, I'll let the nets out again. Peter and Andrew rowed the boat into the deep water. When they had found a good fishing spot, they lowered their nets. Jesus sat silently and watched. Suddenly, Peter felt a huge pull on the net. It was filling with fish. Peter and Andrew couldn't believe their eyes. How was this possible? Using all their strength, they pulled the nets up over the sides of the boat. There were so many fish that the nets began to tear. They called over to their fishermen friends, James and John, who were standing on the shore, to come and help them. Soon, both boats were absolutely full of fish. In disbelief, Peter looked over to Jesus, who was sitting in the boat. He fell to his knees and said, "Oh Lord, please leave me. I'm too much of a sinner to be around you." Jesus gave Peter a small smile and replied, "Don't be afraid. From now on, you'll be fishing for people." They slowly rowed the boat back to the shore. When they arrived, Peter, his brother Andrew, and their friends James and John left everything they owned, their boats, their nets, their family, and followed Jesus. They became his first disciples. Now and then you can do.
So that was, of course, Ryan and Sophie, who are on staff with NZBMS, and Spencer and Emerson. They're currently back in New Zealand, as most of you know. They're living down in Dunedin just during this difficult time of COVID-19. So pray for them. Ryan will be with us actually on the first Sunday in August. That's August the 2nd, I think. So he'll be here to speak with us. So we're looking forward to hearing from him. Well, that's another good fishing story, isn't it, from Luke chapter 5. And in that story, we heard about Simon Peter doing something that I've done many times, which is fish for hours and hours and not catch anything. Anyone else done that? Any other fishermen like? Yeah, some of you know what it's like, don't you? Peter has been fishing all night and hasn't caught a thing. In verse 4 we read, Jesus says to Simon, "Now go out where it's deeper and cast your nets out again." "Master," Simon says, "we worked hard all night and we didn't catch a thing, but if you say so, I'll let the nets down again." You know, Simon is really reluctant to do what Jesus is asking him to do. "Really, Jesus? Are you serious? I've been out all night long. I know this lake. I am a professional fisherman. You're a carpenter. You want to take me out fishing? Besides, I'm cleaning my nets and getting ready to go home. You can't be serious." I wonder if you've ever responded to someone like that when they've asked you to do something. You know, that someone asks you to do something and you give them all the reasons why you shouldn't do it, why they're inconveniencing you with their request, all the reasons why you really don't want to do what they're asking. And then you say, "But if you really want me to, I'll do it." And you're hoping like crazy they'll change their minds. Peter says, "Jesus, I've been fishing all night. I didn't catch a thing. I'm tired. I'm ready to go home. But I guess if you really want me to, I'll go and do it." I reckon Peter's hoping Jesus will say, "Oh, don't worry about it. Okay, let's just go home. We'll go fishing another time." You know, as you read through the Bible, you find lots of stories about God calling people to do something, God asking people to do something. And it seems every time God asks someone to do something, they don't want to do what he's asking them. Think of Moses. When God asks Moses to go to the Pharaoh, to ask the Pharaoh to let the people of Israel go, because they've been slaves in Egypt for a long time, what does Moses say? Moses says, "Really? You want me to go? I can't do that." And Moses comes up with all these excuses why he can't go and do what God asks him. And in the end he says, "Lord, please just send someone else." But then he goes and he does it. What about Isaiah? When God calls Isaiah to do something, Isaiah says, "I'm a man of unclean lips. Woe's me, I can't do this, God." And God says, "Yes, you can. Let me cleanse you. And Isaiah goes. Another prophet, Jeremiah, when God calls him, Jeremiah says, I'm just a kid. Who am I to do something like this? And God says to him, don't say you're just a kid. I will work through you. And Jeremiah goes. Queen Esther, she says, who am I to try and save the people of Israel? I am a woman and no one will listen to me. But God tells her he will raise her up and work through her. And Esther goes. And over and over and over, we read through these stories of people that God has called. And they put up all the excuses, but then they go. Most of the time, when God asks us to do something, inside you'll have a voice coming up with reasons why not. You'll think, I don't have time. Or I can't do that. Or I'm too busy. Or the classic one, I'm not qualified. And you will have 100 different good excuses why you can't do what God is asking you to do. You'll feel like you're not qualified or equipped to do what God's asking you to do. But you know what? There's that old saying, I'm sure many of you have heard this saying before, God doesn't call the equipped, God equips the called. God doesn't call the equipped, He equips the called. See, God isn't looking for people full of lots of great experience. He's looking at people who will just say yes, and then He will equip them to do what He's asking them to do. You know, it's normal to have doubts. It's normal to hesitate when you sense God is asking you to do something. And yes, it's okay to put up all those excuses to God. Tell Him all the reasons why you can't do it. But after you put up all those excuses, then go ahead and do what God asks you to do. It's okay to be reluctant to God, but somewhere along the way, you have to move from reluctant to saying yes. You have to find a way to say yes to God. I wonder if God has been prompting you in some way to do something for Him. I wonder if God is prompting you to serve Him in some new way. Maybe some deeper way. Notice in this story in verse 4, Jesus tells Peter to go out into deep water. It actually says that in the text. Go out to the deep water. Go to somewhere deeper. That sounds a little scary, doesn't it? Go out to deep water. The deep water is in the middle of the lake, where there are squalls and it can be dangerous. So where do you fish at night? Where do you fish at night time? You fish in nearer the shore where it's safer, but it's shallow as well. And so you trawl the shallow part of the lake in close to shore because it's safe. Simon didn't catch a thing at night, and at this point Jesus knows he has been in the shallow water the whole time. And so Jesus says to Simon, I want you to go out into the deep water. The deep water is the place you don't want to go. It's the place that makes you a little bit nervous. It's the place that stretches you and takes you outside your comfort zone. Friends, Jesus wants to take you into deep water. He doesn't want you to stay in the shallow water where it's safe. And so let me challenge you today. Let me ask you today, what might be the deep water for you? What does the deep water look like for you? Are you willing to go outside your comfort zone a little bit and stretch yourself and go into deeper water that maybe just scares you a little bit? For each one of us, that deep water will look like something different. But it's the deep water that you find the greatest blessings in life and the best haul of fish. The deep water is not just about overseas mission. It's not just about packing up your belongings and heading off to some far-off country overseas. The deep water for some of us might simply be telling someone about your faith in Jesus Christ. The deep water for some of us might be telling someone why you are a Christian and what it means for you. That might be really hard for you, but maybe God is calling you to share your faith with someone. Going into deep water for some of you might mean signing up for the Alpha course that's coming up very soon. An opportunity to explore what faith looks like, what it means to follow Jesus. That might be deep water for some of us. Or the deep water might be inviting someone to go on the Alpha course and then offering to go with them to support them. For some of you, going into deeper water might simply mean intentionally taking some minutes out of your day to open the Bible and to read it and then to spend some time praying. Maybe you've never really done that before intentionally. And maybe that's the deeper water for you, to start that journey of reading and praying. The deep water for some of you might be talking to Judy Ann and saying, Judy Ann, I sense God is calling me, asking me to get involved with kids ministry. I know there's a kids club starting this week. And I know you've got needs in our Sunday morning kids ministry. And Judy Ann, I don't have any skill in that area really. I don't think so. But I'm sensing God's calling me. Maybe the deep water for some of you is to say, I'm going to talk to Judy Ann and see how I can get involved. It might be preparing food. It might be just cleaning up afterwards. But there might be something that God is asking you to do that's a bit outside your comfort zone. Maybe the deep water for someone here this morning is that God is saying, I want you to go on mission. I don't know where, you don't know where or what it might involve, but God is calling you to mission like He's called Ryan and Sophie and Peter and Joe and Charlie and our other missionaries that are serving overseas. Maybe God is calling someone here to go on mission. And that will be deep water for you. So friends, I want to ask you this morning, what is the deep water that God is calling you to? So what happened to Peter and the disciples when they did what Jesus asked? Verse 6 says, when they let out their nets, when they've gone out to that deep water, they let out their nets. Just as Jesus asks, they catch this huge haul of fish. And their nets began to break. And they have to shout to their partners in the other boat to come and help them and haul in this huge haul of fish. Otherwise, their boats will fill with fish and they're on the verge of sinking. And when Simon Peter understands, when he realizes what is happening, he falls to his knees. And did you notice what he says? He says, Lord, please leave me. I am a sinful man. That seems like a very odd response to just having had this incredible haul of fish, doesn't it? Lord, please leave me. I'm a sinful man. I mean, this is your professional job. And you've got this huge haul of fish in your boat, and you fall down and you beg the man who helped you catch all of it to go away. I'm a sinful man. Please go away from me. What's going on? Well, notice what Simon doesn't say. He doesn't say, hey, look at me. I'm a professional fisherman. Look at how many fish I have caught. He realizes that it's Jesus who has caused this miraculous event. He understands that it's Jesus who is calling him to follow him. It's like a sign. It's like Jesus is saying, if you say yes to me, Simon, if you say yes to me, you can trust me that I will provide everything you need to do all the things that I ask you to do. And here's the sign, a boat full of fish. Peter says, I'm not worthy to be with this man. If this man really knew my heart, if he really knew me, he wouldn't be asking me to follow him. Jesus, I'm not worthy. I'm a simple fisherman. I see how awesome you are. I'm not worthy to be in your presence. Go away from me. You know what Jesus says to Peter? He says, Peter, I know you. Yes, I do know you. I know all about you. I know what you're thinking in your darkest moments. But guess what, Simon? I want you to come with me and help me to catch people. And you know, some of us probably think like Peter. God would never use me. If God really knew me, if God knew my deepest thoughts, if God knew the things that I do when no one else is looking, He wouldn't be asking me to do anything. Friends, let me tell you, Jesus does know all about you. Jesus does know your thoughts. Jesus does know what you're doing when no one else is looking, but He is still asking you. He still wants you to serve Him. He's saying, I want you. I still want you, no matter what you are and who you are and what you've done, I still want you to come and follow me and fish for people. I want you because of who you are. And I will take those things about you that you think are unworthy, and I will make the most of them. I will make them your most powerful gift. Doesn't matter who you are or what you've done, Jesus is calling every one of us out into the deep water because He wants to use us. There's one more thing I want to leave with you today. I want you to notice where it was that Jesus came to Simon Peter. Where was it? Where was it that Jesus came and met Simon Peter? It was in his workplace. It was while Simon was at work. See, Peter wasn't just fishing for fun. He wasn't a recreational fisherman. He was out there doing his job. He'd been fishing all night. And he's still at work in the morning. He's mending his nets. And Jesus comes and asks to use his boat. Jesus says to him literally, I need what you are doing for a living to do God's work. And while he is literally still in his boat, while he's at his workplace, it is then that Jesus asks to take him out into deep water. It was in the workplace and in the stuff that Peter did with his hands every day that Jesus did this most amazing thing in his life. And see, here's what I think this is telling us. See, we have this idea that we go to church and our faith is kind of over here in our lives. We compartmentalize our lives. In one part of our life, we have church and our faith. In another part, we have work or school or at home. And it's almost like the two don't even meet in any way. But what if Jesus saw our lives different to that? You might say, well, this is just my job. You know, this faith is important to me, church is important and all those things, but this is my job. This is what I have to go and do 40 hours a week or 37 or whatever it is. Or school or whether maybe at home. But Jesus is looking at our work or at home or at school and He's saying, that is your mission place. That's where I want you to do mission. You're going to spend more time in this part of your life than you are over here. You're going to spend more time of your life at work than almost anywhere else. It's not a separate part of your spiritual life, but that part of your life is integral to what I want to do in your life. See, Jesus met Peter in his workplace, and He gave Peter a job to do in his workplace. And Jesus is literally saying, I want to go with you to work. I want to go with you to school. I want to go with you when you're home taking care of your kids. I want us to work together. I want that to be your mission place. I see what you can do there at work or at home or at school. I put you there for a reason. It's not just a job. It's a place to serve Him. And friends, when you walk out the door today, and when you go to work this week, or when you go to school, or when you're at home, or whether you're at your craft group, or whatever groups you're part of this week, do you understand that's not just a job, but that's the place that Jesus is calling to work with you at? That's your place of mission, just like it was for Simon. The story ends with verse 11. As soon as they landed, they left everything and followed Jesus. You know, not everyone is supposed to leave everything. Not everyone is called to sell up everything and go and live far away in some far off country and be a missionary. But we are supposed to be willing to say, Jesus, everything I have, I offer to you. I offer you my heart, my life, my boat, my truck, my stuff, my job. It's all yours. Do with it, do with me whatever you will. Jesus is looking for people who will say that. God, I'm offering you everything I have, everything I am. Use me. Maybe you could say that today to God in prayer. We're going to take a moment to pray. And I'm going to invite you to say that prayer to God in your hearts. Let's pray together. Maybe you want to pray today, Jesus, everything I have and everything I am, I offer to you. God, there are many times I've made many excuses when you ask me to do something. I can come up with all sorts of reasons why I shouldn't do what you're asking. But I want to be able to say yes anyway. God, use me at work. Use me at home. Use me at school. Use me to love people, to be your hands and your voice. To watch out for opportunities to say something about you. Now, just in the quietness, I want to invite you this morning to take a moment to pray for someone that you know is already out there in deep water. Pray for those people you know that are out there doing mission. Maybe it's one of our Baptist mission staff. Maybe it's Ryan and Sophie, or Peter, or Joe and Charlie. Maybe it's Susie, or Darren and Susan, or Matt Old, or maybe it's one of our kids club leaders, or our More Than Music leaders. Maybe it's Judy Ann, or Kim, or one of our youth leaders, Nicola. Maybe it's someone else who comes to mind. Pray right now for one person who's out there in deep water and maybe is relying on your prayers right now. And now pray for yourself and ask God where He wants to use you, where He wants you to be. God, help us here at Northcote Baptist Church to live boldly and courageously. Help us to go out into the deep waters and serve you.